of my earliest vivid memories of watching the WWF when I was starting to watch in my teens was the build and the aftermath of this show. You know, like the couple of weeks building up to it. One of my very first memories is the Hell in a Cell match, the tag team match from Raw like 2 or 3 weeks before this, where Kane's on the roof of the cell banging on there trying to get the Undertaker to stop beating up on Paul Bearer, and all this crazy shit happening here. So really, yeah, my vivid memories, my first memories are of like the build to this, and then hearing at school, oh my God, you hear about Mick Foley in the cage and all that stuff. Fred Blassie narrates the opening package, very, very dramatic, bordering on biblical, a lot of biblical references here. And then we take a hard turn, because we get this hard contrast from May God have mercy on their souls to Super Soaker presents the 1998 King of the Ring. 17,000 people in attendance here. It's a roughly 310,000 buys on pay-per-view, which is up huge from the previous year's King of the Ring, which is roughly 177,000. So almost double what they did the previous year. Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross are on commentary here. They are surrounded by gasoline cans because it ties into the main event on this night. Jerry Lawler sounds especially excited about the prospect of someone getting set on fire by the end of the night.
Either we got a new WWF champion tonight, or we're gonna see a guy get set on fire. It's great either way.
The first match of the night is a 6-man tag as the Headbangers and Taka Michinoku take on Kai and Tai. That's Funaki, Men's Teo, and Dick Togo, also known in some circles as Dick to Go, and they are accompanied by Yamaguchi-san at ringside. This is one of the 2 bonus matches of the night, meaning there was like no build to it, and they're just kind of thrown in there last minute. Taka is the light heavyweight champion as of this show. He was crowned the champion in a tournament back in November. He takes off his robe to reveal he's an honorary headbanger for the night, which gets Jerry Lawler all aflutter. He's very upset about this. Kai and Tai, they debuted about a month or a few weeks before this show. They were originally known as Team Kamikaze or the Kamikaze Kids or something when they debuted. They changed the name. I think this one's for the better. Taka impresses early on with his agility and his high flying on Funaki. Dick Togo and Funaki do a double elbow drop, then do a double jerk off motion. Like that's their taunt after the double elbow drop, which totally threw me for a loop. I did not see that coming, but it was hilarious. Very fast paced work between the Japanese wrestlers. Then once Mosh and Thrasher get involved, things do slow down considerably, but it's mostly a showcase for Taka and Kai and Tai. Togo with a turnaround flying headbutt off the second turnbuckle. That was a really cool variation of the move there. Taka does the hot tag to both headbangers for some reason, so there is some confusion. Funaki misses the top rope leg drop. Mosh and Thrasher lift Taka up and drop him onto Funaki. Michinoku driver for the win. Nice little opener, fun, fast-paced action with Taka and Kai and Tai to open things up. Not too long, though, before all 4 of these guys are together as a unit and try to cut off Val Venus's penis. Long story. After that match, Sable enters the ring. The previous month at Over the Edge, Sable lost a match to Mark Merrow. This was in the middle of their big breakup angle where Mark was jealous of Sable's all the success she was getting, all the attention she was getting. So they had this match advertised at Over the Edge where Mark's like, if I beat you, you're out of the company, but if you beat me, you're a free woman, you're on your own, you know, you're free of your contract with me as a manager. Then he's like, I'm going to lay down for you because I'm an honorable man. But oh, it's a swerve. He winds up pinning Sable really quickly, and so he wins, and Sable has to go, and she has this big tearful goodbye, say goodbye to my fans for me, and she comes back like 2 or 3 weeks later because Vince McMahon brings her back. That's pretty much all that happens there. So Sable introduces Vince and the Stooges, Patterson and Briscoe. They get booed. Lawler refers to it as a standing boovation, which blew my mind because I thought I was the only one who said that stupid phrase. Patterson, as Sable makes her way out of the ring, Patterson slaps Sable in the butt, and she slaps him in the face. And JR with the line of the night saying it's unfamiliar territory for Pat. And then Pat gets on the microphone and just like, I don't know what he says here.
I dare having a woman slap me. Get out of here.
Vince then cuts a promo. It's also worth noting that there's no music for Vince here. This is well before the Royal Rumble 99 was the debut of No Chance in Hell, but that was at the pay-per-view theme. Then after that, that was like his official theme for From Here to Eternity. He did not have music at this point, so it's really trippy going back in times like 1998 and seeing Vince McMahon come out to no music and just booze. That was very interesting. So Vince does some exposition about the main event of tonight, Austin versus Kane. He pulls the audience on if they want to see Austin win and see Kane set himself on fire. But he says, you're all setting yourselves up for disappointment, but it's no surprise to you fans because you've lived a life of disappointment, pal. Then he says he wants to prepare the audience for the disappointment of Kane winning the title tonight. People being disappointed of Kane winning, that's a very interesting way of phrasing it. This is now the 3rd straight classic show I've reviewed now with Jeff Jarrett involved. It's a trip seeing this in reverse chronological order and across 3 different companies, no less. It's a King of the Ring semifinal match as Double J, accompanied by Tennessee Lee, takes on Ken Shamrock. Now, they established on commentary that Shamrock Shamrock's ankle is softened up thanks to Owen Hart and the Nation several weeks ago. They do work the leg a little bit, a tiny bit in this match, but it's really a non-issue. And it's ironic considering that Jeff Jarrett's finisher is a leg submission, but really the ankle and the leg, not much of a factor in this matchup, except for like 1 point. Shamrock with the advantage early on, but Tennessee Lee does have the distraction. Then there's 1 point, this is back in the day when the referees not only would, miss low blows entirely, but they'd also just physically interject themselves into matches, like Earl Hebner style. Tim White grabs Jarrett by the hair to get him out of the corner. That was shocking to me. The match ends when Ken hits a running Hurricane Rana and drops Jarrett right on his head. The ankle lock by Shamrock, and Jarrett taps out instantly. Tennessee Lee runs in, eats a suplex for his troubles, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to give this one 1.5 stars. Shamrock will advance to the finals. He will either face Dan Severn or The Rock. As far as the match itself, like I said, it's like for all the story they're given about the ankle of Ken Shamrock being hurt, they didn't really play up into the match itself, but the match itself was good. I want to point out this exterior shot of the arena where they show the block logo on the LED sign of the arena and an old inflatable Undertaker on the outside with like the old purple hat and everything. This is a weird time for the company because nowadays you would never see like a current star be brought up with like older imagery and older logos, and you would never see them bring up the Scratch logo now with their current logo. But like they had the Scratch logo for months at this point, and they're showing the block logo on the sign, which might just be an arena thing, who knows. But then the old Undertaker inflatable is hilarious because like they would never show that. That would never happen today where you've got like a current guy and they're showing off an old gimmick as part of their promotional stuff. I just thought it was kind of interesting. We get another King of the Ring semifinal match as Dan the Beast Severn, with my favorite theme song of all time, takes on The Rock. Rock is the current Intercontinental Champion, leader of the nation. He's accompanied by Mark Henry and The Godfather, who has just transitioned from coma at this point. He's just now starting his Godfather phase, which of course he will carry for the rest of his days. They are ejected right from the get-go. They're not part of this match, at least for the time being. Severn beat D'Lo Brown and Owen Hart, two other nation members, to get to this point. In his match with D'Lo, he actually took D'Lo out of action by tearing his pectoral muscle with a submission hold. Severn goes for The Rock's legs early and often in this matchup. Rock at one point grabs the ropes. Because he's kind of an ugly takedown. You can hear The Rock audibly just go, "God damn it."
Able to reach into those ropes.
The Rock gets back on top of the match, mocks Severn with a little hopping wrestling stance at one point. We get a double down after a shoulder tackle, and after that happens, Godfather and Henry return to the ringside and distract the referee, and out comes D'Lo Brown, debuting the chest protector, that big bulky thing on him. He comes in from the crowd, hits the lowdown on Severn, gets out of there. Rock covers Severn to win and make it to the finals. He'll be facing Shamrock in the final matchup. I'm going to give this one 1 star. It did not go all that long, and in the time they had, these two I feel didn't mesh that well together. They just kind of like clashed, which is weird because I think Severn's a good wrestler, and The Rock was very good as well at that point. But yeah, this match just didn't click with either of the guys. Cool moment to see D'Lo debuting the gimmick he would then rock for like a year plus after this, but beyond that, just sets up another match in the Rock-Shamrock rivalry. This next match is officially a tag team bout as Too Much, Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor, take on Al Snow and Head. Yes, Head, the mannequin Head, is technically an official participant in this matchup here. We get a very jazzed up promo package that highlights Al Snow's attempts to get a job back in the company. Of course, he just came back from a stint in ECW, and before that, he was a jobber in the Federation as Leif Cassidy and the Masked Avatar. He's coming in the arena with all these different disguises, and the Head is disguised as well. He finally enlists Jerry Lawler for help in getting a meeting with Mr. McMahon, and Lawler says, "I'll only help you if you can beat Too Much in a matchup at King of the Ring." And so, of course, Lawler's very partial to Too Much, even though Lawler never admits on air that Brian Christopher is Lawler's son. Too Much, I thought this was a hilarious gimmick when I first started watching. They had a very ambiguously gay gimmick. They'd always touch up on each other during the matches and during their entrance and stuff. The degree of how ambiguously gay they were always seemed to depend on just how lit up Brian Christopher was on a given night. He is off the walls here. He's just crazy. Like, it's crazy that Scott Taylor is kind of the straight man to Brian Christopher, but they're both outrageous. And the special guest referee for this matchup is none other than Jerry Lawler, who gets up and puts on the referee shirt. I think it's interesting that Lawler is here and he's working against Al Snow. But throughout this whole thing, they never bring up Lawler's hatred of ECW, and Al Snow's an ECW guy. He comes from there, and it's just never brought up. And like, it would make sense if they did that since Snow's come from ECW, but like, there's none of that here. And I thought that was very interesting. It's not mentioned in the build, it's not mentioned in the commentary, not mentioned by Jerry Lawler here on this show. Is it just supposed to be implied, or do they just never mention it? JR is on fire with commentary tonight. He has one great line here in this match where he said that Snow's going alone. He wants to apologize to the fans who thinks that Head's a human being, and he just goes, What am I saying? The King with very biased officiating, very slow counts for Snow and fast counts for Too Much. Alan Christopher on the outside. Snow goes all the way back up the entrance ramp and does this huge running start just to hit a clothesline on Bryan on the floor. I thought that was great. I want to see more of that. Just people just going, ah, like you think something big is going to happen. Just a clothesline. Snow's fighting the odds here. He finally tags in the head, which means he just grabs his head and starts hitting Bryan and Scott with it, and the crowd goes nuts. And Jerry goes,
The head is the legal man. What the hell am I saying?
Snow and Head are a house of fire, but the King's not counting. In fairness, Snow's not the legal man, so that makes sense. He's actually doing a very good job, is Lawler on refereeing. Lawler tosses a bottle of Head and Shoulders shampoo to Brian Christopher. Christopher conveniently attaches to the mannequin head, and then he covers Head, and Lawler counts to 3, and Snow loses the match. Because, get it? They pinned the Head Shoulders to the mat because the Head had shoulders because they put the Head and Shoulders on the head. Ugh. Just like, it's so silly. It's so goofy. I gotta give it 1.5 stars here. It's not much of an actual match, but there's enough entertaining moments and also stuff in commentary that like puts it up from like having kind of a shit rating in my view. Of course, Snow would eventually earn a kayfabe contract. He was there already, of course, but he finally earns the contract later on, and years later would look way more yoked than he does here in 1998. I wonder if the WWF ever tried to work out like a deal, like some kind of endorsement sponsorship thing with Head and Shoulders, and this was kind of their pitch, like, hey, yeah, we're going to mention you here. Speaking of guys who look to be in better shape now than 20 years ago, X-Pac's here, and he has beef with Owen Hart. Owen cost X-Pac his King of the Ring matchup 2 weeks before the show. Then in the go-home week, Pac returned the favor by bashing Owen from behind with a steel chair and just splitting up with the back of his head in the process. Apparently Owen got like 7 staples as a result of that attack. So now they have a match here. This is one of X-Pac's first matches back in the company since his return from a neck injury, and it's his first pay-per-view match in the company in quite some time. In years practically. Match begins on the outside during Owen's intro. Beautiful bridging fisherman suplex by Owen early on. The action spills to the outside once again, and Owen just hurdles X-Pac into the timekeeper's area. X-Pac makes a comeback, but hits the lightest looking Bronco Buster in history, like barely, almost no contact in that Bronco Buster. Both men on the top rope, and they each tumble off the top. In the confusion and the chaos, Mark Henry runs in and splashes X-Pac on the floor. Chyna gets in his face, planting the seeds for their big sexual harassment storyline we'd see around SummerSlam time. Vader comes in, he decks Mark Henry and immediately eats shit. He just falls down after he hits Mark Henry. These two had fought in the past. I forget if it was Over the Edge or No Way Out, but these two have fought in the past for sure. Owen has the sharpshooter on X-Pac, but in the chaos outside, Chyna runs in and hits a DDT on Owen. X-Pac covers and wins the match. So a big win for DX here against the Nation. Best match of the night so far in terms of pure wrestling and story. Good stuff by all involved. I really like this match. We get our second in-ring promo of the night regarding the main event. This time it's Paul Bearer, manager of Kane, and father of Kane too for that matter, showing the impact of the consecutive beatings he's suffered at the hands of The Undertaker the last couple of weeks. He tells a story about his son Kane when he was little and how he was surrounded by pictures of The Undertaker, growing up and watching him and idolizing his older brother on WWF Superstars, saying he wants to be like him. How do you think that makes me feel? It's a really good speech by Bearer here. It's, good promotion for the match, which just in case you don't know, there's a first blood match for the title happening here. We've only had 2 in-ring promos about it, and we're going to hype package for it before the match itself. So I think we know this match is happening. It's awkward to hear the backstory of Kane and how he's idolizing The Undertaker and surrounded by the pictures when we know what's going to happen with his story and his whole backstory as the years go on and once he's unmasked and everything goes to shit. It's our second bonus, aka no build match of the night, as the New Age Outlaws defend the WWF tag titles against the New Midnight Express, who are accompanied by James E. Cornette. The Midnight Express are the NWA tag champs, but JR emphasizes this is for the big one, his words not mine, the WWF tag team titles. We are in the waning hours of the failed NWA invasion, which Cornette spearheaded around this time, and it shows. The light in Cornette's eyes are dim at this point. He doesn't even have his tennis racket, for God's sake. He's just so out of it. We get a stare down between Billy and Bart Gunn earlier in the match, former tag team partners and champions and kayfabe brothers. It's really cool to see some action between the two of these guys here, given their history. Both guys looking good in this matchup as well. JR and King spent a lot of time in the match, the bulk of the match actually, trying to figure out which one of the Midnight Express is bombastic and which is bodacious. They even say it on commentary, and I've already forgotten which one is which. Bob takes down Road Dogg, yells out, "Suck it!" Does one of his own crotch chops, then gets just blasted from behind by Billy Gunn, like, "That'll teach you to mock us and copy our shit." Gunn goes for a pile driver on Bob. Cornette, who's been pretty quiet for most of this match, decks Billy with the NWA title, but Billy kicks out. Cornette goes for it one more time, but then Gunn catches him, and there's this very long moment, the stare down here where Cornette's going, I got the belt, and Gunn's like, you better not hit me with the belt, and Cornette's like, I got the belt, and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting for Chyna to make her damn cue, because the whole thing is Chyna's supposed to hit Cornette with a low blow, but they're just waiting forever. Chyna's not in position. She finally gets around after what feels like an eternity. Chyna finally hits Cornette in the gonads with the low blow. Gunn and Road Dogg drop Bob Holly with a massive drop onto the top rope. The elevation that Bob took for this one was impressive. Cover and the Outlaws retain the tag team championships. I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 4. The finish was sloppy, and hearing Cornette tell the story is hysterical in his podcast, but beyond that, it was a fine tag team match. It's the final match of the King of the Ring tournament as Ken Shamrock takes on IC champ The Rock. These two have had quite the rivalry over the last half year or so. They fought at WrestleMania 14 over the championship. Shamrock won initially. He won with the ankle lock, but he would not let go, and so the referee reversed the decision, and so The Rock was able to retain that way. The rivalry would continue through almost the end of the year here in 1998, but this is just another stop in their rivalry. Hey, have you seen enough Chyna yet? Are you sick of Chyna yet? Yeah, it's funny just watching, because I haven't watched 98 wrestling in a long time, so watching this review really brings back the memories. I forget just how pervasive not only is the DX Nation feud all over this damn show, but you also just forget how crucial Chyna is to the group, because she's involved in so many finishes of so many matches with DX, especially DX versus Nation. DX and Nation was like the mid-card feud for the time. Like, it defined it because there were so many members and they're all fighting each other, and Chyna was involved in almost every matchup here. Triple H, last year's King of the Ring, is doing commentary for this match. Chyna actually at one point joins the Spanish commentary team, so one of the rare occasions you hear Chyna speak and you find out she's bilingual. Speaking of bilingual, some of Hunter's best commentary gems happen in this very match.
You just can't pose in any nudie magazines and they take your crown away.
Huh?
You're not bilingual?
There's a lot of bi things I am, but lingual's not one of them. Hey, wait a minute. Did I just mean to say that?
I don't think you did. Are you unplugged, Triple H?
Testes, 1, 2,
Yeah, you're on.
3?
Some good back and forth early on between Rock and Shamrock. Triple H spits water in The Rock's face when he's nearby, which causes a temporary lapse in the action. Shamrock gets thrown out of the ring and catches his hand in the ropes. That looks painful. Rock gets a lot of offense in on Ken, who keeps kicking out. The Rock is perturbed. Still not working the ankle, funny enough. Great float over DDT on Shamrock, who kicks out yet again. Shamrock gets in the zone with a spinning heel kick, a power slam on a fisherman suplex, and The Rock with a huge power slam of his own. All of these guys are just busting out all their big moves here. The Rock goes for another DDT, but Shamrock counters a Northern Lights suplex. Both men just kicking out of everything. Lots of near falls, lots of high drama here. Rock gets caught in the ankle lock, a tap out. Shamrock does let go after the bell rings. He wins the match and is the new King of the Ring. I'm going to give the match 2.5 stars. A really good match here. Lots of tension and suspense and excitement as the match wore on, as we got near the end. Lots of really exciting near falls. Kind of surprised they downplayed the ankle injury. Like I said, between the Jarrett match and this one, even less so here than the Jarrett match. No mention, no real exploiting the ankle injury. Just kind of a non-issue. Why'd you bring it up in commentary if no one was going to do anything with it? Ken Shamrock, and I have to say, Ken Shamrock became one of my favorites after winning this tournament, and the pushy guy as Intercontinental Champion and everything. You really feel that he could have been a lot more than he was in the WWF after this tournament win and his run as IC champion. I think the problem with Ken was an issue of timing. I think he showed up at a time when the main event was already pretty loaded and there was no room for him in that position. I think if he showed up a few years later, or maybe a few years before, in fact, maybe things could have worked out differently. But be that as it may, it was still a great moment to see Ken here, and probably one of his major career highlights. Okay, folks, I'm going to cover this match to the best of my abilities. I hope I do it justice. I'm sure you guys have the visuals of the match and your memories of the match playing in your head before I even show the footage here. It's the Hell in a Cell match, Undertaker versus Mankind. Just the latest in the on-again, off-again blood feud these two have had since 1996. However, things were on hold for a bit since Revenge of the Taker, the In Your House pay-per-view from 1997. Mankind comes out for his entrance and just climbs to the top of the cell right from the get-go. We all know where this is going. Taker makes his entrance, and this entrance right here for me is just peak Taker. This is Undertaker when I began watching. I loved the robe, I loved the music and the visuals. Everything just clicked for me. This is why I loved Taker back then. Taker climbs up to follow Mankind. They brawl on the roof of the cell. It looks very dicey up there. You can see some zip ties popping out and their legs are poking through the ceiling of the roof of the cage the whole time. Then we fight with about a minute in, maybe less than a minute or so. We get the first iconic moment of the matchup where Taker throws Mankind off the roof of the cell and falls about 6 16 feet to the floor through the Spanish announce table. In all honesty, credit to Mankind for being able to stick the landing and fall about as cleanly and expertly as humanly possible on that table. He still separates his shoulder in the impact of that fall, but I don't think very many people could have taken a fall that clean from that height and made it look good. Terry Funk, the doctors and the refs, and everyone rushes to Foley to check on him as Taker stands tall in the cell. They actually raise the cell several feet so the EMTs can wheel Mankind out. But then, up in the rampway, Foley gets up off the stretcher and up the aisleway. He starts making his way back to the cell. Now, Foley, like I said, separated his shoulder. Undertaker working with a broken foot from the beginning of this matchup, but the two of them climb back up the cell and onto the roof. The fight resumes, and we get iconic moment number 2. Chokeslam through the roof and into the ring. Steel chair hits Foley right in the face upon impact, which knocks out one of Mick's teeth and up his nasal cavity, out of his nose, which is just a crazy thing to see. That's the iconic shot of Foley smiling with the blood in his mouth, the tooth hanging out of his nose. Crazy stuff. The moment was allegedly unplanned. There's conflicting reports of whether or not the cell roof was supposed to give way in the chokeslam. I don't know how it wouldn't have. I don't know how it would have held up, considering you see them walking along it earlier and you see the zip ties ping ping popping out just from the weight of them walking on the damn thing. So Foley has said in an interview that if he had taken that bump properly in the ring, he likely would have died. So probably the way he took it was probably the best way for him. He did briefly lose consciousness from the fall, though, he said. Taker gets back into the ring. He hops down from the roof. He chokeslams Terry Funk out of his shoes, and it's just chaotic. It's just madness. The match somehow continues. Foley is still able to go on. They're wrestling. Taker goes for his top rope walk. Mankind knocks him off and is somehow able to mount an offensive. Undertaker goes for a suicide dive, but Foley gets out of the way, and so Taker eats the cage wall. Mankind with a pile driver, leg drop, double arm DDT, but he's not done yet, because then comes iconic moment number 3, thumbtacks. My God, thumbtacks. They tease it for a while. He's got the mandible claw on Taker. He gets onto Taker's back, but then Undertaker revives, drops him hard on his back onto the tacks. Doesn't get quite the entire pile. It gets kind of like the outer edge of it, so Foley rolls around the pile a bit for added effect. A choke slam that gets all of the tacks. Then we get a tombstone for the win. Jesus, what a match. That's 4 stars. How could you give it a rating anything less than 4 stars, especially given what these two put each other through, especially Mankind. My God, I've probably seen this match more than any other match in my life, and it never ceases to fascinate me. I'm always in awe watching this thing. I can watch it again and again and never get tired of it. It's so fascinating. The match reset the standard for every match like this. This and Rumble 99 did probably the worst for Foley's body and worst for his career. Today's matches absolutely fail to match up to this standard, which is ironic because, they bring up Hell in a Cell with the pay-per-view so many times and they always invoke this matchup, but no match is going to come close to this. And rightfully so. We just saw them try to replicate Foley's fall with Kevin Owens at Extreme Rules this past weekend, the fall off the cage to the table, and that had an air mat, a padding to cushion the fall, which is for the best. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying, they try to invoke it and recreate it, but it just can't be the same. Foley has said in the past that if he had took that bump today, that first fall off the cage and through the table, they probably would have stopped the match, and he said rightfully so. But man, just like an incredible, awe-inspiring match. It's amazing. Not much time for a come down here as we have our main event, the WWF title on the line as Steve Austin defends against Kane in a first blood match, first of its kind in the company. Kane won the #1 contendership at the beginning of the month by beating The Undertaker with some help from Mankind. He and Mankind are now working in tandem, so we see the uneasy alliance between Austin and Undertaker that will carry on into the build for SummerSlam. Kane announces in the Go Home show, this is the week before the actual pay-per-view, where he says, "I will set myself on fire and breathe my last breath." It's like, wow, what a hell of a last-ditch effort to plug this show here in the main event. Hey kids, order the pay-per-view, you might see someone immolate himself. Stone Cold's gutting it out here, as Jim Ross said on commentary. He's fresh off a 3-day stay at the hospital where he was treated for high fever and dehydration and a staph infection in his elbow. You can see the giant wrapping around his elbow with the softball underneath it all. Kane debuts his new double-sleeved attire tonight, where basically he has no exposed skin, so if he bleeds, how can anyone tell? It's a brilliant strategy. As they begin to fight, the cell starts coming back down, nearly comes down to Austin's head and neck. It's never established who's actually moving the cell, but it's moving a lot in this matchup here. The brawl continues, the cage is now raising, Kane is now teetering on the bottom bar of the cell door for a minute, and Austin's punching him. It's a pretty funny visual. They fight to the entrance area, Kane backdrops Austin onto the concrete and suplexes him on the ramp as Vince McMahon looks down from his posh luxury suite with Sable beside him. Jerry Lawler's doing a very good job on commentary in this match as he explains, know how Austin needs to get away from metal. He brings up Kane's attire and his whole the mindset and the psychology of the First Blood match. I think Jerry does a very good job with commentary here. Kane shoves Austin into Hebner by the barricade, and that's a ref bump. Mankind, somehow, what are you doing, Bubby? Just sit down. You've earned the rest. He hobbles back to the ring with a chair as the cell lowers again. Austin hits the stunner on Mankind, then onto Kane. Undertaker comes in with a chair. He's wearing his street clothes now. He goes to hit Mankind, who ducks, and he nails Austin in the head. Camera gets a very clear shot of Austin gigging himself after the fact. Taker revives the ref with gasoline. Austin bashes Kane with a chair, but Hebner wakes up, sees Austin bleeding, and rings the bell. Kane wins the match and is the new world champion in a shock of shockers. Just a wild, chaotic brawl with lots of like entertaining, mad stuff happening throughout, like the cell going up and down, the gasoline, the chairs, the entrance fighting, all this stuff was going on. It was great. I think no one was going to predict that Austin was winning this match and that Kane would actually set himself on fire. Nobody thought that was going to happen. So, the question is, how do you get around that? How do you book a finish that protects everyone and makes everyone look good? This was about as good a way to do it because Austin doesn't look weak in getting beat by outside contact to bleed and lose the match. It wasn't Kane who beat him, it was The Undertaker who technically beat him. So anyway, the next night on Raw, Austin would win the belt back from Kane, and that was, a very long drought for Kane for a very long time. It was a very, very long period of time when Kane never sniffed the world title or the WWE title ever again until very, very long time after that point. So the one-day reign was really all Kane fans had to grab a hold of. And this whole thing set in motion the highway to hell at SummerSlam between Austin and Taker. So was Taker in cahoots with Kane? Like, they built the whole whodunit, or the storyline. Are they actually together now? And they eventually would be. So that was the first big storyline I remember really following when I began watching wrestling. So again, like I said, this pay-per-view really, this really ticked all the boxes for me in terms of nostalgia and for just, oh yes, this is very, very fun time of my childhood watching this stuff unfold. I think the show had a lot of stuff going on for it. The tournament, which was like overshadowed tremendously by the Hell in a Cell and First Blood matches, rightfully so. But there was that stuff going on. I think my other favorite match of the night was X-Pac and Owen Hart. Things I didn't like about the show overall were like, Rock and Severn. Probably the weakest match of the whole night was that one. I think the last two matches especially really elevated the show. If it weren't for those two, if it weren't for Hell in a Cell being as amazing as it is, and if it weren't for the First Blood match being as crazy as it was, then this show would probably get a much worse grade. If there's anything else I could say negatively about this show that's kind of a nitpick though, is just the overuse of Chyna in this show and how crucial she is to like every finish of like a DX related match. I know that was kind of their thing, but man, like when you saw it over and over again in one show, that really started to get kind of distracting. But beyond that, it was a very strong show, very solid, and like all the feels for me. Like I said, this is like near and dear to me. It's like right around the time I started watching wrestling, so the memories are just so bright and vivid. And yeah, this is a really fun show.